Okay, this is the last Macbeth video lecture that I'm producing for my summer school students. English 20-1, summer 2020. We finished off yesterday with Macbeth, Act 5, Scenes 1 to 4. So I'm going to now go into, as always, Macbeth Spark Notes. Move into their study guide and their No Fear translation. So we left off where Malcolm orders his army to cut tree branches for each of the soldiers to help camouflage their numbers. A tree branch sounds small. They hewed, not just chopped, hewed down a bough. So they took a huge, a large branch. It looks like almost like a tree, because a small branch isn't going to hide anybody, not big men. So this is the scene where Macbeth learns about Lady Macbeth's death and that the third apparition is coming true. Enter Macbeth, Satan, and soldiers with drum and colors. Hang out our banners on the outward walls. The cry is still, they come. Our castle's strength will laugh a siege to scorn. Here let them lie till famine and the ague eat them up. Were they not forced with those that should be ours, we might have met them dareful beard to beard and beat them backward home. He believes he's safe inside the castle, that this castle can withstand a siege. And he acknowledges that they have among their host, among their soldiers, many men who should have been following Macbeth, all of the thanes and all of their soldiers that left him to join Malcolm. There's a cry within of women. What is that noise? It is the cry of women, my good lord. Once again, why do we even have the stage direction? We're told by Macbeth's reaction to the noise and Satan telling him that it's the cry of women. Satan exits. Now, what would a director do? He could have Macbeth order him to leave, or Satan just uses this as a great opportunity to get away from the crazy Macbeth. But Satan is his one and only loyal servant. I have almost forgot the taste of fears. The time has been my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek, and my fell of hair would at a dismal treatise rouse and stir as life were in it. So there would have been a time when this would have startled him. But I have supped full with horrors. Direness familiar to my slaughterous thoughts cannot once start me. I have committed far too many heinous acts myself to be so easily moved by something of this effect. Satan returns. Wherefore was that cry? The queen, my lord, is dead. She should have died hereafter. He doesn't have time to mourn. He's got an army marching on his castle. This is the man who loved his wife to such an extent that he wrote her as soon as he could so she could share in the joy of what the prophecy suggested. There would have been a time for such a word. If she had only died after, then there would have been time to mourn her. He has no time to mourn his wife. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. This is how tired he now is, how life is passing for him. It is slow, monotonous agony. and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Everything is coming to death. And here is the one epitaph he has for his wife. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. It's a philosophical pondering of life, his musing about life and how meaningless it is, his life in particular, where he struts and fretted upon the stage, and now he's about to die, and nothing more to be said. The meaninglessness, the emptiness of his life, and it ultimately signifies nothing. Enter a messenger. Thou comest to use thy tongue, thy story quickly. Gracious my lord, I should report that which I saw, but I know not how to do it. Well, say, sir. As I did stand my watch upon the hill, I looked toward Burnham, and anon methought the wood began to move. The third apparition. Macbeth shall never vanquished be till Burnham wood do come to Dunsinane. And his messenger saying that as I stood up on the hill watching, I could barely believe my eyes. I thought the woods were moving. Liar and slave. Let me endure your wrath if it be not so. Within this 3 mile you may see it coming. I say, a moving grove. If thou speaks false, upon the next tree shalt thou hang alive till famine cling thee. If thy speech be sooth, I care not if thou doth for me as much. He doesn't care if he ends up in. Now, what he's talking about here, upon the next tree thou shalt hang alive till famine cling thee. That was an old execution, very slow means of killing someone. They would lock them in this cage that was hanging above the ground, and the person would get no food or water save what rain might give them. And so they would stay there until they died, and their flesh literally rotted off their bones. And he doesn't care if they do as much for him, if he's telling the truth. If thy speech be sooth, if you are telling me the truth, I care not if thou dost be for me as much. Because Macbeth can never vanquished be till Burnham wood do come to Dunsinane. And now, as the messenger mentioned, a moving grove. Dunsinane, Burnham wood, is now coming to Dunsinane. Now he begins to doubt the witches. I pull in resolution and begin to doubt the equivocation of the fiend that lies like truth. Fear not till Burnham wood do come to Dunsinane. And now a wood comes to Dunsinane. Arm, arm, and out. If this which he avouches does appear, there's nor flying hence nor tarrying here. So if what he's saying is the case, we can't waste any time. We have to get ready and go out to battle. His absolute, utter exhaustion of life. Which may be why Lady Macbeth threw herself off the battlements. Which is what I assume she did. And I think I make that assumption based on the Polanski film again. We will learn at the end of this act that it was believed to be an act of suicide. But we never get any details. I begin to be aweary of the sun and wish the estate of the world were now undone. Here is a desire for death. Ring the alarm bell, blow wind, come rack. At least we'll die with harness on our back. He intends to fight to the bitter end. You can hear my puppy in the background. Now we're going to switch from Macbeth in preparation for war to Malcolm and his soldiers and their arriving and their preparation for war to battle, and it's always back and forth between Malcolm's army and Macbeth. And then there, of course, is when they come together. Drums and colors. Enter Malcolm, Siward, Macduff, and their army with bows. Now near enough. Your leafy screens throw down and show like those you are. So they are close enough, they throw down their camouflage. You, worthy uncle, shall, with my cousin, your right noble son, lead our first battle. And of course, this is important because his cousin is in another scene and will be one of those who fight with Macbeth. Worthy Macduff and we shall take upon what else remains to do, according to our order. Now, this can't sit well with Macduff, I'm sure, because he wants to get there and find Macbeth. But one does not contradict the order of their king. And even though he's not officially the king, he is their king by right, and they are backing him and trying to help him gain the throne. Fare you well. Do we but find the tyrant's power tonight, let us be beaten if we cannot fight. So we are going to fight to the death, just as Macbeth said. Make all our trumpets speak. Give them all breath, those clamorous harbingers of blood and death. He wants this war to start. He wants this battle to begin because he wants ultimately to get in there and find Macbeth, because he is burning and his wounds are ripe and they're ripped open, his wife and his children. Alarms. Enter Macbeth. They have tied me to the stake. I cannot fly, but bear-like I must fight the course. This is a lovely simile, and I guess in a sense allusion, because this is a well-known, for Shakespeare's day, a well-known form of entertainment. It's rather sick and barbaric, and when I explain it to you, you'll understand what I mean. They would chain a bear to a stake so strong the bear could not break it. And what they would do is they would release dogs to attack the bear. And of course, this would be a betting sort of thing. How many dogs can the bear kill before finally one of the dogs ends up killing the bear? And so he is tied to the stake. He is the bear. He can't fly. And bear-like I must fight the course. He is going to start killing as many dogs as come his way. Now, just in the previous scene, remember, not the last scene, but the scene before, I begin to doubt the equivocation of the fiend that lies like truth. Fear not till Birnam wood do come to Dunsinane, and now a wood do come to Dunsinane. And yet, he's still clinging to the prophecies. What's he that was not born of woman? Such a one am I to fear, or none. Enter, young Siward. What is thy name? Thou'lt be afraid to hear it. No, though thou callest thyself a hotter name than any is in hell. My name's Macbeth. The devil himself could not pronounce a title more hateful to mine ear. This is Macbeth. This is the man we met. Act 1, Scene 2, not through person, but through what was said about him. And now his name, not even the devil could pronounce a name more hateful. No, nor more fearful. Thou liest, abhorred tyrant. With my sword I'll prove the lie thou speakest. They fight, and young Siward is slain. Which, of course, they're going to fight. With my sword I'll prove the lie thou speakest. And, of course, thou wast born of woman. But swords I smile at, weapons laugh to scorn, brandished by man that's of woman born. He kills young Cyward. And he believes the prophecy. The prophecy proves to be the case here. But really, when you think about it, a young man, probably his first time on the battlefield, up against a seasoned, tried, true soldier like Macbeth, who was able to carve through all of these soldiers of the enemy at the beginning of the play, where he carved the passage to the slave, which was MacDonwald, in which he then shoved his sword in his guts up to the knave to the chops, if you recall that. A seasoned, it would be very hard for a very young, untried soldier to survive up against someone like Macbeth. Exit. Alarms. Enter Macduff. That way the noise is. Tyrant, show thy face. If thou beest slain, and with no stroke of mine, my wife and children's ghosts will haunt me still. The guilt remains. If you die by anyone else's hand but mine, I will live with the guilt of my wife and children's deaths. He must be the one to kill Macbeth. In fact, he can't kill anyone. I cannot strike at wretched kerns whose arms are hired to bear their staves. These are, who's left with Macbeth? Mercenaries, or those who are forced. Either thou, Macbeth, or else my sword with an unbattered edge I sheathe again undeeded. There thou shouldst be by this great clatter, one of the greatest notes seen bruited. Let me find him fortune, and more I beg not. He desperately wants to be the one to kill Macbeth. That's all he is doing on the battlefield, is searching him out. He must be the one to kill him. If I don't get to find him, my sword is not going to hit anyone else. It will remain unbattered because he will not strike at the wretched kerns. He hears another large clamor that suggests to him where he might find Macbeth. And of course, he's asking fortune to allow him to find Macbeth. He doesn't want anything else, just for the opportunity to come face to face with Macbeth and kill him. He exits, alarmed. Enter Malcolm and Cyward. This way, my lord. The castle's gently rendered. There's very little, almost no battle. And this line, interestingly enough, is shows how so few people remain behind to fight Macbeth, that Malcolm's army has no one to engage with. But Shakespeare still has some battles. He has Macbeth killing young Cyward. And we have here this great clatter telling us that there's another battle going on somewhere else. The tyrant's people on both sides do fight. The noble thanes do bravely in the war. The day almost itself professes yours, and little is to do. Everyone is fighting for you. Our people, his people. And so little is needed on their parts. Malcolm acknowledges, yes, we have met with foes that strike beside us. Those who should be our enemy are there fighting with us. So it's still, one cannot say no battles like Polanski's version where, there's no one left and it's just Macbeth. Shakespeare has some people on Macbeth's side, some soldiers, because of course hired mercenaries will fight for the person who pays them. Enter Sir the castle. Enter Macbeth. For me, it's not even a scene change, but yet this is scene 8. For me, all of these are units in one long scene. The minute we leave Lady Macbeth in her sleepwalking scene, we enter into preparation for war, and then we enter into the battle. So perhaps preparations for war, one scene, and then the battle and all of the many units within that for another scene. Why should I play the Roman fool and die on mine own sword? This is goes back to the Roman soldier when in a state of defeat would throw himself on his sword rather than be captured. This always makes me think of Star Trek and how the play Macbeth would be brilliant if it was done as Klingons. While I see lives, the gashes do better upon them. While I see lives, the gashes do better upon them. Everyone who comes up against him, he's killing or wounding. Nobody is able to touch him. So he's still clinging to that prophecy, and for now, the prophecy appears to be saying exactly what it said. No one can harm him. Enter Macduff. Turn, hellhound, turn. Of all men else I have avoided thee, but get thee back. My soul is too much charged with blood of thine already. So while Macduff has been running around looking for Macbeth, Macbeth has been keeping an eye out to see if he can avoid Macduff, because he bears the guilt of having had his wife and children murdered. Macduff doesn't want to hear this. I have no words. My voice is in my sword. Thou bloodier villain than terms can give thee out. They can't say enough about how evil Macbeth has become. And here, I'm not talking. I'm here to fight. My voice is in my sword. They fight. Thou losest labor. As easy mayest thou the entrenchant air with thy keen sword impress as make me bleed. He still believes the witches, even after Birnam Wood do come to Dunsinane. He doesn't accept the fact that someone can kill him. And he said, you might as well make the air bleed as to attempt to make me bleed. Let thy blade fall on vulnerable crests. I bear a charmed life which must not yield to one of woman born. What causes someone to cling so desperately to a lie, well, a half-truth, knowing that he cannot trust the words of the witches, especially after learning that the third apparition comes true? He is clinging desperately. It's like, why? Why are you clinging? Why do you refuse to open your eyes? Well, he has no choice now. Despair thy charm, and let the angel whom thou still hast served tell thee Macbeth was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. So I don't believe they called them cesarean sections in those days, because of course they would cut the woman open and they would take the baby out, and it was a death sentence for the mother. It was usually done, I would imagine, as a desperate measure. She's dying and the baby's dying, so one of them at least can be saved, so we cut her open and we take the baby out that way, so the baby has a chance of surviving. But that was not considered a natural birth. That was considered an unnatural birth. The baby did not go through the birth canal. The baby was not born through the loins of its mother, or in this case, his mother. And he has just slapped Macbeth in the face with the second apparition coming true. Accursed be the tongue that tells me so, for it has cowed my better part of man. Of course, this is a man who can kill me. Finally, oh my God, and be these juggling fiends no more believed that pelter with us in a double sense, that keep the word of promise to our ear and break it to our hope. Cosmic irony. it's about time. It's too late for him to figure out what the witches were up to. And of course he says, I'll not fight with thee, you can kill me. And Macduff hits him the hardest with, then yield thee, coward, and live to be the show and gaze of the time. We'll have thee as our rarer monsters are painted on a pole and underwrit, here may you see the tyrant. Fine, don't fight me. You have been captured, and we will turn you into a mockery. And of course, he is then branded coward. This is a brief, very brief moment where Macbeth regains a semblance of honor. Unlike the other Thane of Cawdor, who confessed his guilt and confessed his guilt and professed his love and loyalty to Duncan before he dies, Macbeth, at the very least, refuses to die a coward. He will fight to the end. This is his slight, the Wheel of Fortune. Macbeth rose to the top as in the king's favor, and then he rose higher to become the king, and then he is being deposed, and he is now down there in death, awaiting death. But he is granted a slight opportunity. He takes this one bit of his character. You cannot say that, like the original Thane of Cawdor, his soul has been wiped clean. Macbeth's hasn't, but he will not die a coward. He will die honorably. He will fight to the death, even though it will mean his death. I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet and be baited with the rabble's curse. I will not do as the previous Thane of Cawdor. I'm not going to kiss the ground at Malcolm's feet. I'm not going to, acknowledge him, the true king, or whatever. And even though Birnam would be come to Dunsinane, and thou opposed, being of no woman born, yet I will try the last. I will fight to the death. Before my body I throw my warlike shield. Lay on Macduff, and damned be him that first cries, hold, enough. Now here they exit fighting. I saw production. Oh, I'm trying to remember where I saw it. And I believe it was definitely on stage. I don't think it was in London, because I don't think I saw any Shakespeare in London. I saw Shakespeare in Toronto. And what's not true, I did. I saw Hamlet in London, but I didn't see Macbeth there. I saw Macbeth in two places, Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan, and I saw it at the Citadel. It might have been at the Citadel, or maybe somebody described the scene to me, but I'm sure I saw it. But it's so vivid in my mind that I can actually see the action happening. A raked stage in which, so here's where the audience sits. Well, the audience actually sits on an angle, and then the stage is on an angle. This is a raked stage, just like the audience sitting on an angle. So you have this raked stage, and Macbeth and Macduff fight up to the edge of this raked stage. And so this particular director did not have them fighting off stage. And at one point, Macduff knocks Macbeth to the ground so that he is lying. Let's do it this way. I need a pencil. So the eraser is Macbeth's head. And Macbeth is lying there at the edge of the stage with his head at the edge of the stage. And Macduff's sword comes up and chops Macbeth's head off. Now, what we see looks like he's chopping Macbeth's head off, but what's actually happening is the actor throws his head back behind, and his sword comes down, and it looks like he's chopped Macbeth's head off. And the timing was brilliant, because as soon as he threw his head back and the sword went down, there was this thump on the behind the stage. It sounded like the head had fallen and dropped, and the audience screamed, and Macduff reached down with his sword and stabbed it into what was, of course, obviously then the mock of Macbeth's head, and he raised it up with the blood dripping down the sword onto his hand. Oh my God. So, just, yeah, yeah. I usually draw the raked stage for the kids, and I show them Macbeth, and I show them how he, it's just, yeah, it's just beautiful. So, alarms. They enter fighting, and Macbeth slain. Retreat, flourish, enter with drum and colours, Malcolm, Syward, Ross, thanes, and soldiers. I would the friends we miss were safe arrived. Some must go off, and yet by these I see so great a day as this is cheaply bought. They've lost hardly anyone. Syward is yet unaware that his son is one of the loss. Macduff is missing, and your noble son. Your son, my lord, has paid a soldier's debt. He only lived but till he was a man, the which no sooner had his prowess confirmed in the unshrinking station where he fought, but like a man he died. Then he is dead, aye, and brought off the field. Your cause of sorrow must not be measured by his worth, for then it hath no end. Had he his hurts before? Aye, on the front. Why then, God's soldier be he. This is where I'm thinking Klingon. Anyone who's a Star Trek fan and knows the Klingons, the father is proud of his son's death. Why then, God's soldier be he. Had I as many sons as I have hairs, I would not wish them to a fairer death. And so his knell is knolled. He's worth more sorrow, and that I'll spend for him. He's worth no more. They say he parted well and paid his score, and so God be with him. Here comes newer comfort. Enter Macduff with Macbeth's head. Hail, King, for so thou art. Behold, here where stands usurper's cursed head. The time is free. I see thee compassed with thy kingdom's pearl, that speak my salutation in their minds, whose voices I desire aloud with mine. Hail, King of Scotland. So this is where all is now set to right for Scotland. The time is free. The murder of Duncan threw Scotland into a state of chaos, that crime against God and nature and chaos ensued. And now that the usurper is dead and his head upon a pike, Scotland is free. And now they can all hail the true King of Scotland. Hail, King of Scotland, flourish. Malcolm, the play ends with Malcolm giving his first state address. I guess you could call it a state address. That's what a president or a prime minister perhaps would do. We shall not spend a large expense of time before we reckon with your several loves and make us even with you. My thanes and kinsmen henceforth shall be earls, the first that ever in Scotland in such an honour named. Remember, after that first war against Norway with the Thane of Cawdor and MacDonald, the traitors, and how did Duncan thank his chief generals? Not with payment, Now, Malcolm is a better king than his father because he knows and he shows the proper respect to those men who fought for him. And he is creating a new title, that these will now be earls. What's more to do, which would be planted newly with this time, as calling home our exiled friends abroad that fled the snares of watchful tyranny. Now, specifically, Donalbain. He fled to Ireland while Malcolm fled to England, and no doubt there were others who fled as well, producing forth the cruel ministers of this dead butcher and his fiend-like queen, who, as 'tis thought, by self and violent hands took off her life. This, of course, is where we learn that Lady Macbeth, it is believed, committed suicide. Now, of course, suicide deemed a sin, and all who commit suicide go to hell. She will join her husband in hell. This and what needful else that calls upon us by the grace of grace, capital G, the grace of God, we will perform in measure, time, and place. We are going to do everything that is necessary. We are going to reward those who have fought for me and brought me to this state. We are going to call back all our exile friends who had to flee because of the butcher and his fiend-like queen. And I will do this. I will perform in measure, time, and place. So thanks to all at once, and to each one whom we invite to see us crowned at Scone. Scotland has been righted. All right. Wahoo! Act 5 is done. I really look forward to reading your newspapers, everybody.